There is growing concern for the health and well-being of our children. And it's prompted the government into setting out a new vision for how schools should respond to the problem.
I'm very encouraged about the wider government agenda because it provides us with a fantastic opportunity to really promote healthy living across all of our students so that we produce happier, healthier and higher achieving children.
I think if we don't act now, we're just waiting for that time bomb to explode. We've got to make a direct change to our children now. Time is slipping away for them. The habits are being started and we've got to be instrumental in putting positive images for their health, for their sake, for their future.
The government's White Paper on Health, published in November 2004, outlined a new plan to integrate education with health and social care.
Well, the definition of a healthy school is a hotly contested one, and you'll find that because everybody actually understands health up to a point, and also has been through schools, they all have a view on what a healthy school should be like. Many people think that healthy schools, immediately they think about healthy eating, and particularly parents think about the school lunch. And though that's important, we wouldn't underplay that, there are wider and deeper issues as well. And we're looking at embedding a whole school ethos of promoting health, supporting pupils in a very people-centred way whilst they're in school. There are 8 themes to the healthy school standard, but the 5 most important ones, in terms of the ones which have been picked up by the government's white paper in November 2004, are healthy eating, physical activity, sex and relationships education, drugs education, emotional health and well-being. All these 5 have to be satisfied before a school will achieve health school status. And of course, the one which probably underpins a whole lot is emotional health and well-being. And some people would say, look after that, and the rest fall into line. That's a matter of some dispute, and there are different ways of approaching emotional health and well-being.
At present, 3 of the 5 criteria for healthy schools, sex and relationships, drugs, and emotional health and well-being, are taught under the banners of PSHE and citizenship. The current view is that emotional health and well-being are the key to promoting healthy behaviour in children.
Perhaps the most important area that schools could and should be addressing in terms of children's health is the whole area of mental health, emotional health and well-being. All of us live in an increasingly pressurised, stressful world, and I think we can't protect children from that, but if we can encourage them to develop good coping strategies so that the impact on them is a less negative one and that it actually doesn't have a detrimental effect on their health, then that's something really positive that we can all work towards. But it's also a time when we do have some joined-up thinking at government about the need to link all the services that support children. And so this, for me, seems to be the time absolutely to capitalise on promoting health through schools.
This move to integrate health, social and education services suggests that the school environment will change radically. Newly designated healthy schools will be responsible for not just the intellectual well-being of the children, but also for their physical and emotional health. The White Paper's vision for a healthy school is ambitious, but as the school day starts at Rushcroft Secondary, they've already achieved 2 of the 5 healthy school objectives, combining healthy eating and physical activity in their breakfast clubs.
This morning what we do is we put on a breakfast club. We do it each morning of the week with a different activity. This morning is obviously basketball. What we're trying to do is encourage pupils to get into school earlier so they arrive at school on time. They have a morning club from 7:30 to 8:30. Then they have a chance to go and get breakfast and then they go to their registration. I think if children are coming to school early in the morning and getting some sort of physical activity first thing, they're a lot more alert during the morning lessons. I suppose the idea of it really is to allow them to have breakfast in the morning so they're far more alert when they may be a little bit more tired normally if they hadn't had any food at home first.
We know that there have been several well-designed large studies that show that what children eat at breakfast and whether they eat at breakfast has a big impact on how they perform during the morning. We know that children that skip breakfast are more likely to have problems concentrating, perform less well on verbal reasoning tasks, creativity tasks and memory tasks. And we've also got a lot of anecdotal evidence from teachers which suggests that children who skip breakfast have problems concentrating in the morning and are more likely to have behavioural problems throughout the morning.
Today, children are eating more fast foods, spending more time in front of screens and less time exercising than ever before. Fewer and fewer children are physically active and more are overweight, some obese.
Well, if we follow the current trends, what we're looking at is by 2020, 1 child in 2 being obese. Now, clearly that's really terrifying. All of the children who are obese are much more likely to become obese and overweight as adults, and that's going to set them in store for some major health problems. We know that obesity is a major risk for heart disease, for diabetes type 2, for some types of cancer, for stroke, for high blood pressure. And all these diseases are both life-threatening and life-limiting, and potentially it will undo the really good work that's been achieved so far in bringing levels of heart disease down.
The problem may feel overwhelming, but it seems you can make a difference to children's health simply by making small changes now. Adopting a whole school approach to healthy eating has been made easier by a new Food in Schools resource pack. But how much influence can a school actually have?
I think some teachers do feel a little kind of beleaguered and think, oh, here come the health police again to beat us with another stick because it's our responsibility, our fault if children aren't healthy. And clearly it isn't entirely, up to schools to take this on. But I think there are huge advantages for schools embracing a health improvement agenda because fundamentally children who are well, who feel secure, do better. And clearly schools have a great opportunity to influence children in their behaviour, to provide an environment where it's possible for them to adopt healthier habits and to learn coping strategies. And they also have an opportunity to influence the wider community and to get that kind of wider involvement as well by influencing parents. And clearly schools can't do it on their own. And I don't think anybody's expecting them to do, but just to take their part in the partnership that can actually bring about a generation of healthier, happier children, which I think is probably what we'd all want.
The extent to which you and your school can affect a child's home life has always been a matter of some debate. At Bourne Westfield Primary School, they're building a community relationship between parents, teachers and governors. Working together, the responsibility for children's health is shared, and it helps bridge the gap between school and home.
We did discuss last time about the children doing a health booklet involved with information in facts, stories, poems, puzzles, that sort of thing, to deliver to the parents as such, because I know we wanted to do something for the parents. It's because we felt that although we were working so hard with the children doing healthy lunching, healthy eating, healthy living, it wasn't always being fed back to parents. So I think it's something we need to pick up.
I think this could be a way of actually bringing some flesh and bones on the ideas that go home, so that you can talk about some of the things in a lunchbox, in an ideal lunchbox, if you like. So Bourne Westfield first began promoting health in a serious way about 6 or 7 years ago. Prior to that, we'd always encouraged children to bring small items of fruit and that sort of thing into school. And from that, those early beginnings, we actually developed it and built upon it almost year upon year. One of the key aspects of the Healthy Schools Group, which was very well supported by Lincolnshire County Council, was the notion of having a health task group, and that in its way also was an unusual body for the school, because it was one of the first times we'd actually had a group of people who represented staff, parents and governors, and actually got together and discussed notions about the school's health and how it should move forward.
And add it to the new booklet as well, just so it's reinforced, Yeah.
We do want to teach and work with children in school and talk and work with them around diet and exercise and health, adopting healthy lifestyles, but we also need to do the same with parents. And we hope that some of the messages that we give to pupils in school will be taken home. And there are some examples coming through now where children are starting to ask their mum to cook them a healthier dinner. They're starting to talk to their dad about his smoking and his alcohol drinking. So in a small way, teaching children about these healthier issues in school is starting to have a wider impact.
Under this new government initiative, all schools will be assessed on their contribution to improving children's health. In the White Paper, sex and relationships and drugs education are central to overall health.
I think emotional literacy, being able to understand how you feel and being able to articulate it appropriately, are going to be things that will be with us through life, and we do need to develop and practice those skills at school. And if we don't do them there, then I'm not sure where our young people will get them.
Back at Rushcroft Secondary School, they recognise the importance of mental health on a child's development.
What could we do over the next few lessons to create an atmosphere here where people feel comfortable, where they can ask questions quite comfortably. What can we do?
Research and reports that become available to us seem to be indicating that things aren't getting better with regards to young people's general well-being, certainly health being a major issue, which indicates that it's probably more important now than ever to provide as much information to students in a classroom environment as possible. Bearing in mind that not many of our students will get an opportunity to look at these issues themselves independently outside of school. Though what we do encourage our students to do is to go home and draw families into some of the topics we cover. We will give them some homeworks which are research family views on a particular issue. The idea is to maybe generate some discussion at home and for students to realise what boundaries their parents think are suitable for them as opposed to what boundaries we think are suitable for them.
The emotional health and well-being of children is something that can be addressed at any age, and the earlier the better. At Bourne Westfield, they've introduced a new initiative, the Peer Mediation Scheme. It helps children to take individual and collective responsibility for their relationships at school. And it has dramatically reduced the day-to-day problems that the children encounter.
Welcome to the Peer Mediation, and it's a good start because it means that you want to become friends again. We have some promises to make to you. Our promises are, we won't take sides, we won't gossip about what's happened in the peer mediation, unless we tell a teacher, because we're seriously worried about yours or anybody's safety.
What we all think of is we can make friends again and play properly and just sort out anything if anything happens.
Do you think that you need to apologise to each other or anything like that, or are you both forgiving each other?
Both forgiving each other. Yeah.
Would you like to shake hands?
I think one of the finest initiatives that we've introduced at the school is the notion of peer mediation. Peer mediation is essentially about how children try and solve their own problems, how they work out what's actually happening at a grassroots level and sort out any issues that are occurring right where they start and as early as they possibly can. What we found and what I discovered to my surprise and delight was by actually having peer mediators trained up properly and then actually utilised within the playground, that an awful lot of problems simply disappeared, and delighted at that really, and it takes an awful lot of pressure off the staff within the school.
When we would be looking at good PSHE, effective PSHE in schools, the types of things we'd want to see covered really are young people being able to develop a really good self-esteem. That's so vitally important to be coming out of school feeling confident, being aware of yourself, being able to take responsibility, being independent. I think you're going to stand much better chance of meeting the challenges that present themselves to us through life, and I think we'll get on much better as people as well.
That's the theory. But what's the reality of putting all this into practice? Can you be expected to successfully implement these changes? And if you do, will it actually make a difference? Or is it just another thing for you to have to deal with on top of all your other work? At the Millennium Primary School in Greenwich, many of these issues were discussed in more detail by Colin Noble, acting head of the Healthy Schools campaign, Amanda Dennison, head teacher at the Millennium Primary School, and Cassandra Jardine, Daily Telegraph writer and the author of several books on parenting. Cassandra, a mother of 5 children yourself, so you should know something, and having written in depth about parenting, do you think the government has highlighted the right areas?
Well, I think it's marvellous that they're thinking about it at all. A lot of what I've read about it sounds to me rather general and sort of nice, sort of pie-in-the-sky thinking. I'm hoping for some practical, on-the-ground things and for things to happen sooner rather than, more sport by 2008, I think we've been told. Could we not have more sport sooner? I'll be very interested to hear from our other panellists what actually is happening in a more practical sense, because as a parent, what I see is still filthy food in my children's primary school, unhealthy snacks, occasional sort of nods towards, oh, well, you should be having 5 fruits and veg a day.
What do you think on a practical level, because it's hard to apply the practical label to as large and as nebulous an area as emotional health and well-being. Yes. What do you think about that?
I think one can be too caring sometimes, and really one needs to just say, we're here to learn.
Yeah, I think we're talking carts and horses really here, aren't we, Colin? Because you think put the emotional health in place first, and then the rest will follow?
I'm not sure it's a question of sequencing. It's a question of seeing that all these things are interconnected. And so, for example, if somebody's having a good lunch and is being well praised in lessons, then they're going to feel emotionally more healthy. If they don't get that, they're going to be emotionally destroyed. So it's not a question of necessarily seeing how any of these things in silos, but seeing how they interconnect.
Amanda, how much importance do you place on the emotional and, health and well-being of your children here at the school?
I think we have set a high importance on that in our school. We have a very proactive school council that meet with me every 3 weeks and discuss issues that they bring from their classroom on the agenda, and they run and set the minutes for those meetings and give the minutes out and things. They run that.
This is primary school children?
Yes, primary school children.
Cassandra, do you think that, laudable though all this is, it sounds as though too much time can be spent on seeing that the children are all right instead of actually just teaching them?
Well, I think in the wrong hands, with people who don't know how to do it and to, parcel out time appropriately. It can, I've certainly experienced of schools in which there seems very little time left for teaching because everybody's caring a lot of the time. But I'm sure it can be done. I'm sure that you are doing it, and perhaps
a lot of teaching does go on here. We do teach everything that needs to be required, but that's I think. This is just something that underpins the whole ethos and comes through everything that we do.
Sometimes, children, if they're being constantly invited to express themselves, don't realise that there are inappropriate times to do that. And, right at this moment, you're meant to be quiet and listening. And
I think that what Cassandra's saying here is quite interesting because it throws at what I've heard recently about concerns by head teachers and school improvement officers around the dilemma or the tension between the standards debate, in other words, the GCSEs, your SAT results on the one hand, and now this increasingly interesting and powerful voice in government and elsewhere about the whole child and the health of the child. And some schools are saying, well, here's standards and here's the whole child, which do you want us to do? I think the answer is that if you really want to drive up standards and sustain standards, you can't just concentrate on teaching and learning.
But Colin, there's no statutory requirements of how much PSHE is to be taught in schools. So how will the majority of schools meet those achievements? Without driving teachers completely bonkers?
Well, in fact, it's interesting because the QCA, that's the Qualifications and Curriculum Authority, are bringing in end of key stage statements on PSHE. We've got to see children not just as fodder for the examination system, but as people in their own right. I think there's a difference between happiness as something you want to have as an aim in itself, and seeing that a young person who's happy and confident and relaxed is far more likely to learn than somebody who feels pressured and feels if they fail, they're for it.
One of the other areas, apart from emotional health and well-being, is teaching children about sex relationships and drug education. How appropriate do you think that is, Cassandra, for primary children? We're in a primary school.
Well, I'm assuming all mine have learnt about it, but they never bring it home and tell me about it. So it either makes no impression or sort of goes in so deep that they don't want to discuss it because it's all embarrassing. I see no harm in it, though. Obviously, there are parents who find it objectionable.
Colin, what new ways is the government encouraging primary schools to support teaching children under the age of 12 on these matters?
In new ways, I think we're talking about role play, we're talking about more experiential. I don't talk about role play in terms of sexual role play, but in terms of...
That's a mercy.
But we're talking about... It is called sex and relationships education. And many people get hung up by the word sex. And I think that if we try and explore the word relationships more, A, people find it more acceptable, and B, we can think about all sorts of interesting, more active learning about how to explore what we mean by relationships and how to sustain them, how to stop them. In an ideal world, we'd be seeing parents and schools getting together and making sure that the curriculum, the home curriculum and the school curriculum was in fact married, and the kids got a sustained, consistent message about sex education.
Amanda, the area of nutrition has always been a sticking point, and there's lots of conflicts between what children are told at school or what they learn at school and what happens at home. And a lot of teachers, I think, feel that they don't have any control over this. What do you feel?
I think it is a difficult one. I think it's a very difficult area, but I think And I think we're just starting to delve into that, to be honest. I mean, at my school, we do have a sort of standard thing for packed lunches, for example, and there's certain things that they're not allowed.
Is that adhered to?
Yes. Yes, I mean sometimes it's not, and we have to send letters and reminders and things, you know. But generally, it's adhered to, yeah, as well. But
Cassandra, what's your you wrote a memorable article about packed lunches.
Oh
once.
yes, well I did go and
the
see
hell
this.
of packed lunches.
Packed lunches are hell because you just never do them well enough, and I churn them out by the million, and they have a ghastly monotony to them, and I'm afraid they're not nearly as healthy as they should be, and I long for my children's primary school to produce a decent meal, but at present it produces something so disgusting that I couldn't possibly ask them to eat it. And it's not necessary.
Have you spoken to the school about it?
Well, the school has just had its kitchen redone by the LEA, and it isn't designed in such a way that you can't actually cook in it, so that's that lot of good. I went to a marvellous school the other day where a dinner lady called Jeanette Ori has just become the Soil Association.
Oh, she's the pin-up girl of school dinners, because she does organic food. She's taking control of all the food that the children eat.
Instead of spending 30 pence or something per child on the actual ingredients, she's spending more than twice that, and I ate the meal and it's absolutely delicious and not sort of totally threatening to a child, not all brown rice and tofu at all. It was sausage casserole with beans and it was great.
How seriously do the government take what children eat in schools? I mean, they say they take it very seriously, but Cassandra's tale of her primary school is very common, you have to admit.
School meals problem is still a problem because there are statutory regulations about what a school meal supplier has to supply, but these were based on food types and not nutrient types, and it is difficult because so little money is spent on school food, and we need to increase that amount.
But Cassandra, you took the responsibility because you saw that your primary school was no good, really. So you've taken the responsibility over, really, haven't you? Do you feel you should have to?
No, I long not to, because I'm not very proud of my packed lunches, and I feel the school could easily do a lot better. But it's not so much the schools. It's the local education authority, isn't it, that it sends these things out?
It's, in a sense, it's not. I mean, because of the nature of school funding now and school organisation, the school has the power to contract who it wishes to be the school supplier, school meal supplier. Going back to packed lunches, we've had situations where we've had horrendously angry letters into the National Health Schools team about packed lunches and how schools are forcing healthy food into kids. And how chocolates now sort of taken out at packed lunches at the school gates, and how kids don't want to eat McDonald's, and how the whole thing's a conspiracy against choice. And we've got to recognise it's not just about education. This is actually about values here as well. And people think sometimes they want their kids to eat things we may think isn't healthy.
Well, I think you've got to stand up to them, haven't you?
Well, I mean, it's an interesting point, isn't it? Because somebody's got rights here. I expect everybody's got rights here, parents and pupils.
And that's what we'll have to leave the subject of food because we have to get on to the knotty problem of physical education. Now, the outgoing Education Secretary Charles Clarke recently announced they were pressing for 4 hours of PE, and he was sitting there and saying, "I'm sure all children want to do physical education for 4 hours a week," pretty much what he said. Do we believe him?
I don't. I mean, with all due respect to Charles Clarke, I used to be a PE teacher amongst other things, and I know that some kids didn't like it at all. And it didn't really matter whether it was teen games or games like squash or badminton, they just did not like it. And the two activities which kids most like as cohorts are dance and swimming. And the two things they get least of at school are probably dance and swimming. And I think perhaps we need to look at that a bit more carefully and think not so much about PE, although that's very important, but also about physical activity in its broader sense, whether it's walking to school or cycling to school or playground activities.
Yeah. I mean, as far as schools are concerned, it's hard to fit 4 hours into the curriculum with the demands of everything else. You know, so I think schools have to be looking after school provision. You know, we have a dance club and there's football training and things that go on after school that children can choose to do.
It sounds as though the teachers will never ever be allowed to leave the school before 8 o'clock, or they'll have to sort of clock on at 6 in the morning for preschool clubs, after school clubs, in order to integrate, to implement all these initiatives by the government.
Well, I mean, I think everybody's now used to the idea that schools is not just about teachers. There's a whole range of adults who come to school, and we'll be working with young people on a whole range of activities.
None of our after-school clubs are run by teaching staff.
Right. Are you prepared to run up and down the pitch with a whistle?
No, but lots of people who are trying to get people interested in football clubs, you know, they all send in their coaches. There are lots of organisations longing to recruit. They've got outreach programmes, so let them reach out, is my feeling. And, you know, I'm finding that my children are much more enthusiastic about any kind of sport which has a voluntary element to it, rather than PE, which is embarrassing stuff in your knickers in front of the whole class. And it's going down very well.
Colin, again, the whole scheme sounds laudable, marvellous on paper, but how does the government actually intend to join up these services?
Well, by 2008, the government hopes to see all schools in the country become extended schools, which means they will be offering extended services to the local community. And that means there could be a number of different services, for example, GP surgery, or dentists, or even a bank or a post office or a shop, all on the same campus as a school. That wouldn't be true of most schools, but all of them will be offering something extra from what they would normally offer from the 9 to 5 or 9 to 3:30 school time.
Amanda, are you nervous? Is it a challenge, an opportunity? Do you feel that teachers are going to have to change their skills?
I think it's a great opportunity. I think the more things that you can have on site to encourage parents and children to be involved in things that are different to the normal school day, I think is fantastic. And at our school we do have lots of after-school clubs, languages, music, physical sports and Bollywood dancing at weekends, all sorts of things going on. And I believe that if those things are going on and children get some positive feedback and self-esteem in those areas, they come into school more, I can do that rather than I can't. So I think anything that will promote that is excellent. And I think it's a different, I mean, teachers will still be in here to teach. These things are extra things that other people will run. And I think it is a challenge. And, you know, managing all these after-school clubs and things at weekends and letting, you know, it's a big extra pressure on the school, but I do think that it's important. So I think we just have to change the way we're working because society's changing and we've got to change with it.
If there were ways to open up these school facilities outside hours, it would be marvellous.
Thank you, Colin Noble, Amanda Denison, Cassandra Jardine, and thank you for watching School Matters on Teachers TV.